Madam President, let me add to my colleagues my thanks to Senator Portman for his tremendous work here and wish him the very best in his future as well. Madam President, I come to the floor today to talk about a very important issue. Our country has made great progress in the fight against COVID-19. Families have been getting back to their daily lives, and the thing I keep hearing from people in my home state is they want to keep it that way. They want to keep moving forward and make sure we never find ourselves in a situation like that again. And I couldn't agree more. But that means actually taking action. It means not letting this moment, this Congress, pass us by, and instead actually delivering the public health reforms families need, which is why I'm here today urging my colleagues to ensure that any end-of-the-year package includes our bipartisan Prevent Pandemics Act. Senator Burr and I have led the Help Committee this Congress, and from day one, it was clear to us that pandemic preparedness had to be a priority, because the next time there is a crisis like this, we cannot have people asking, why can't I get a test? Where can I get reliable information? How can we be so unprepared for this? And that means we must learn the lessons of the pandemic and ensure that our government actually works better and smarter in preparing and responding to public health threats, which is exactly why Senator Burr and I set out to do when we crafted the Prevent Pandemics Act, which passed out of our Help Committee in an overwhelming 20-2 vote earlier this year. Our bill improves our public health system by learning from what worked and what did not in our COVID response. A big piece of that is establishing the Office of Pandemic Preparedness and Response Policy at the White House to serve as mission control, so that we have a team in place ready to go 24/7 to guide our federal response to new and emerging threats. We have also seen how dangerous shortages have been throughout this crisis, which is why the Prevent Pandemics Act strengthens our stockpiles and supply chains for drugs and ventilators and testing and components and masks and other life-saving medical supplies. And of course, with a new threat, the issue isn't just a shortage of tools, it's that the tests and the treatments and the vaccines may not even exist yet. So our bill establishes ARPA-H, which is a new agency focused on cutting-edge medical research like the kind that made it possible for us to develop a safe, effective COVID-19 vaccine in record time. Our bill also supports potentially life-saving research on issues like antivirals for pathogens with pandemic potential, antimicrobial resistance, better coordination in our blood supply, best practices for emergency preparedness and response, and long COVID, which many people are still struggling with. This pandemic has also put a spotlight on how inadequate data from outdated and often incompatible systems can make it very hard for our health experts to do their jobs. In the 21st century, the CDC should not be collating data sent to them from fax machines. And incomplete demographic data should not hinder our experts making life-saving decisions. So put simply, our government can work better and faster than this. That is why the Prevent Pandemics Act will finally help modernize and standardize our public health data practices. Everyone should understand without some really common sense reforms, we can make our public health system work better for everyone. By the way, including our communities of color, tribes, people with disabilities, rural communities, and others, who have really, as we have seen, borne the brunt of this crisis. We are talking about really basic bipartisan steps like making sure tribal access to medical supply stockpiles, better practices for demographic data collection, and improving diversity in clinical trials. And that's especially critical. In fact, the Fred Hutch Cancer Research Center in my home state of Washington just published a new study showing how Black communities, Asian communities, women, and others were underrepresented in many of the U.S. COVID clinical trials. We have to do better for all of our communities, and we have to do better for parents, too. I've heard from too many moms and dads throughout this pandemic who felt like no one was listening to them about the challenges that their kids and their families were facing. As a mother and a grandmother, I pressed for this bill to make sure the National Advisory Committee on Children and the Disasters, which directly advises the Secretary of Health, must include parents and caregivers and teachers as members. Of course, in addition to all those common sense steps to strengthen our public health system for future health emergencies, there's more work to do if we are to fully reckon with the lessons of this pandemic, which is why Senator Burr and I worked with our other members to include a bipartisan proposal for an independent task force modeled after the 9/11 Commission to conduct a comprehensive investigation into the U.S. response to the COVID-19 pandemic and issue recommendations. While there's more to do to strengthen our public health system beyond these reforms, and I will keep pushing on this issue no matter what, the Prevent Pandemics Act represents meaningful, bipartisan progress, carefully negotiated between Republicans and Democrats over nearly a year. I should say it also reflects Senator Burr's long-standing focus on pandemic preparedness. This has been a life passion for him, even before this pandemic. His thoughtful expertise and his tireless work have been critical to crafting a strong bipartisan bill. I could not have asked for a better partner across the aisle to work with over the past 2 years. Madam President, earlier this week, I listened to Senator Blunt's farewell speech, and in his address to this body, he said, "We don't have to agree on everything. We just have to agree on one thing." That's how we help people and solve problems. Madam President, in our Prevent Pandemics Act, Republicans and Democrats agree on a lot of things. Families across the country are watching closely. Let's show them that we are taking the lessons of this pandemic seriously. Let's show them that we are taking action so we never go through a crisis like that again. Let's make sure that the Prevent Pandemics Act is part of our year-end package. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.